Greetings. After spending a considerable amount of time as a lurker, I have finally decided to share my story with you all. It is about how my ex-wife cheated on me. And believe me, it's quite a long tale. So grab a cup of coffee. Sit back and relax. I started dating this wonderful girl when I was 18. And we were together for almost 6 years. During this time, I worked hard and managed to land a job at a dealership where I made a handsome salary of over $50 a year. I even bought my first house all while we were still together. I paid for our wedding out of my own pocket and even flipped cars to make ends meet for 2 whole years. However, during this time, my wife's neglect towards herself kept increasing day by day. We got married in November 2017. And things were great initially. Almost like a fairy tale. However, it only lasted 2 weeks. That's when my wife's behavior took a turn for the worse. Suddenly, she told me that she wanted to mess around with other women and have threesomes and so on. I tried my best to fulfill her wishes. But her infidelity caught up with her first. The first time I caught her cheating was she was sexting a man from West Virginia to make herself horny, so that we could have better sex. To my surprise, she was almost proud to tell me about it. I was devastated and lost my temper. After all, we had only been married for a month at that point. We tried counseling and therapy where the therapist told me that I needed to pay more attention to my wife even though I was working over 60 hours a week because she didn't want to work. It was challenging to do so, but I tried my best to make it work. As I reflect on my past experiences, I recall a time when I had a difficult time trusting my partner. She had been persistently asking me to take a trip to Florida to visit her grandmother, and after months of trying to build back the trust in our relationship, I finally gave in and urged her to take the trip alone. Although I had reservations and saw many red flags, I buried them deep within myself, convincing myself that if I didn't give her space to prove her trustworthiness, I would never be able to trust her again. However, my decision turned out to be a grave mistake. When she returned from Florida, I noticed that she had become incredibly attached to her phone, constantly laughing and giggling on it and taking it everywhere she went. Moreover, we hadn't had sex in nearly 3 months by this point, and it was already April. Despite all these warning signs, we proceeded with our honeymoon plans to Hawaii as we arrived in Maui. I couldn't help but feel uneasy as my partner continued to be glued to her phone. While I drove around the island in a rented Mustang, gas convertible, trying to have a good time. Our honeymoon mainly consisted of her laying in the condo room, engrossed in her phone while I ventured out to explore the beautiful sights that Hawaii had to offer. Despite my efforts to make the most of the situation, our lack of intimacy continued to weigh heavily on me. I vividly remember a day that changed my life forever, May 18, 2018. I was lying in bed with my partner reading a book when I saw the purple devil emoji on her chat screen. My gut instinct told me that something was not right and I felt a wave of anxiety wash over me. I tried to shake it off and trust her, but after a few seconds, my curiosity got the best of me and I asked her about the chat. She initially showed me a different screen, but my suspicion grew stronger, and I grabbed her phone to look at the other chat. What I saw shattered my world into a million pieces. She was sexting, video chatting, and talking to another man about the most kinky and explicit things I had ever seen. To make matters worse, she was bad-mouthing me to him, calling me emotionally abusive, and expressing her desire to leave me. She even mentioned missing the time she had spent with him in Florida. I was completely broken, devastated, and destroyed. Despite my pain, my partner shrugged it off, rolled over and went to sleep. The next morning, she went out with her friends, leaving me alone to deal with my thoughts and emotions. I was in the worst mental state I had ever been in, and I couldn't take it anymore. I knew I shouldn't have been alone. So I started messaging my closest friends and family, telling them how much they meant to me and how much they meant to me, and how much I appreciated their love and support. One of my best friends thankfully recognized the warning signs and repeatedly called me until I answered the phone. He urged me not to do anything stupid, and promised to come to my house to make sure I was okay. His words and actions meant the world to me, and I will always be grateful for his unwavering support. Despite his busy schedule and Atlanta's rush hour traffic, he left his $80,000. He left his $80,000. And ensure my safety. I gave him all of my guns that day and asked him to hold on to them until I was no longer a threat to myself. As time went on, it was already June 2018, and my ex-wife and I were still struggling with our relationship. Even though we were going to counseling and therapy, I still felt miserable about the situation. My daily routine was the same: work, home, clean, and sleep. I spoke to my loved ones and confided in them about everything that had happened. Eventually, I came to the realization that divorce was my only option. I consulted with lawyers, took their advice and formulated a plan. On July 18, 2018, I told my ex-wife that I needed to talk to her about something when I got home. She didn't seem bothered by it, and I let her believe that I had forgiven her. When I arrived home, I asked her to join me in the basement before she began preparing dinner. We both sat down, and I explained to her that our relationship was not working, and that her infidelity was something that I could not handle. I told her that I had made the final decision to file for divorce and that nothing could change my mind. I made it clear that she could stay in the house until she found another place to live, but that the house was mine before we were married, and I intended to keep it. Unfortunately, that night turned into a nightmare and she ended up leaving with a friend. As I moved on with my life, after the divorce, I found myself constantly bombarded with updates about my ex-wife's reckless behavior. Friends and acquaintances would send me screenshots of her various dating app profiles and even details about her sexual exploits despite her infidelity and betrayal. She would still reach out to me begging for a second chance and promising to be the perfect spouse. However, I knew that there was no going back. My ex-wife's desperation eventually reached a point where she broke into my home and faked a suicide attempt. This was a clear indication that she was struggling to cope with the reality of our separation. It didn't stop there. She also slept with one of my best friend's groomsmen, further emphasizing her lack of respect for me and our relationship. We officially divorced on our 1-year anniversary, and I gave her a generous settlement agreement hoping to make the process as smooth as possible. However, my ex-wife took advantage of my kindness and failed to fulfill her part of the agreement. I paid her bills, gave her my new car to drive, which she wrecked, and even gave her 90 days to secure financing for the car and transfer it to her name. She failed to do so and even threatened to damage the vehicle before returning it. Desperate to be rid of her, I offered to give her a fully paid-off car in exchange for the new car so that I could sell it. But she refused and I was left with no choice but to repossess it from Tampa, Florida, where she had moved to. It was a difficult and costly process, but it was the only way to get the car back in my possession after several months of legal battles and stress. I paid her a substantial amount of money to cut her out of my life for good. Though the process was long and arduous, it was worth it to finally move on from a painful chapter in my life. From the comic side, I got information from a mutual friend that ex contracted some stud and had to stop her ducking spree for a moment. I am grateful to have found an incredible partner who loves and supports me unconditionally. She is everything I could ever want in a partner and has stood by me through all of the ex-wife drama. I'm lucky to have her in my life and know that everything happens for a reason. Despite the difficult times, I am happy and grateful for the lessons I have learned and the wonderful people I have met along the way. Stop. Before you continue, remember to like and subscribe if you like the video. Everything helps for the algorithm.